Meet Derek and Priya. They're both 28. They live in the same city. They both earn $65,000 a year. And after a few years of packing lunch instead of buying it, ignoring every limited-time car ad on their feed, and successfully convincing themselves that their current car will probably be fine for one more year, they each managed to save $8,000. Financially, identical. Temperamentally, not even close. Derek likes owning things outright. He wants a car that's completely his, no mileage limits, no rules about aftermarket rims, and the freedom to drive it into the ground if he feels like it. Priya likes always having the newest thing. She likes low, predictable payments, a warranty that covers almost everything, and the option to walk away from the whole arrangement every few years without a second thought. So they make different choices. Derek buys, Priya leases, and we're going to follow both of them for the next 9 years. Every loan payment, every lease renewal, every oil change. And every dollar each of them either builds up or drives off the lot to see where two people who started with the exact same income and the exact same savings actually end up. Let's get into it. Derek and Priya are both shopping for the same car, a new sedan with an MSRP of $32,000. Derek decides to buy his outright, or at least as close to outright as $8,000 allows. He puts down $6,400, which is 20%, and pays another $1,600 in sales tax, title, and registration. That's his full $8,000 gone before he's even adjusted the mirrors. That leaves him financing $25,600. He takes a 5-year auto loan at 7%, which works out to about $507 a month. Add roughly $130 a month for insurance, and about $70 a month set aside for maintenance, and Derek's total monthly cost of owning the car comes to around $777. Priya's math looks completely different. She leases the same car for 36 months. Because a lease only charges her for the portion of the car's value she actually uses up, the depreciation, plus a finance charge, her payment comes out to about $430 a month. Insurance included at a similar $130. Most repairs are covered under the factory warranty during the lease. So she budgets a token $20 a month for the odd wiper blade or air filter. Total monthly cost around $580. To drive off the lot though, Priya still needs some cash up front, first month's payment, a security deposit, and an acquisition fee, coming to about $2,000. That leaves $6,000 of her savings untouched, which she puts straight into a broad market index fund. And every month, the $127 she's not spending, compared to Derek, goes in right alongside it. Now this is usually the point where someone says, sure, but Priya will never own that car. Derek's payment is actually building equity. And there's some truth to that, but it's worth being honest about how much equity and how fast. A brand new car loses a big chunk of its value the moment it leaves the dealership, and keeps losing more every year after that, typically 15% to 20% in year one alone. So while Derek's loan balance is dropping by a few $100s a month, the car underneath that loan is often losing value faster than he's paying it off. For at least the first couple of years, Derek doesn't have positive equity, so much as he has a car worth less than what he owes on it. Priya, meanwhile, owns nothing. Her $430 a month buys the right to drive a depreciating asset for 3 years and then hand back the keys. That's not throwing money away any more than Derek's loan is automatically building wealth. They're both paying for the use of a car that's shrinking in value the entire time. The difference is who's holding the depreciation. Let's jump forward 3 years. Priya's first lease is up. She's put 34,000 miles on the car, comfortably inside her 12,000 mile a year allowance, and hands it back with a light scuff on the bumper that the dealer charges her $180 to buff out. She signs a new 36-month lease on the next model year, pays another roughly $2,000 in drive-off costs, and her payment barely moves. Call it $440 a month this time around. Derek, 3 years in, has paid his loan down from $25,600 to about $16,400. The car is now worth somewhere around $19,000. That gives him roughly $2,600 in equity. Real, but modest, and it took 3 years of $507 payments to get there. Priya's portfolio, meanwhile, has had that original $6,000 compounding at an assumed 10% annually for 3 years, growing to roughly $8,000, plus 3 years of $127 a month contributions, and their growth, adding around another $5,300 in dollars a month contributions, minus the $2,000 she just spent re-upping her lease. Her total portfolio sits at about $11,300. So after year 3, Derek has $2,600 in car equity. Priya has $11,300 sitting in the market and a brand new car in the driveway. Not exactly close. Now, this is where cars start behaving very differently from houses. A house tends to appreciate. A car never does. Every year, Derek keeps driving. His equity grows for one reason only. The loan balance is shrinking, while the car itself keeps quietly losing value in the background. By year 5, Derek makes his final loan payment. The car, purchased for $32,000, is now worth somewhere around $13,000. He owns it outright. His monthly cost drops from $707 down to about $200. Just insurance and maintenance, no payment at all. Priya at year 5 is 2 years into her second lease, still paying around $400 a month. Still driving a car that's 2 years old at most, still investing the difference. Which, since her lease payment barely changed while Derek's disappeared entirely, now works out to roughly negative $240 compared to Derek. In other words, for the first time, Derek is now the one saving money every month. Let's go to year 9, Priya's third lease term, Derek 4 years into owning his car outright. Derek's car, now 9 years old, is worth somewhere around $8,000. He owns every bit of that. Over the past 4 years, his maintenance bill has crept up. Brakes, a battery, a set of tires, averaging closer to $150 a month instead of $70, but with no loan payment at all. His total monthly cost is still only about $290. His investing has been zero throughout this whole comparison, because every spare dollar simply went toward the car and then, once it was paid off, into ordinary life. Priya has renewed her lease twice more, spending roughly $2,000 in drive-off costs each time, and has never once had a car payment above $450 a month. Her original $6,000, compounded at 10% for 9 years, is worth roughly $14,100 on its own. Add 9 years of monthly contributions, which shrink and eventually went negative once Derek's loan was paid off, and after accounting for the repeated drive-off costs, her portfolio comes out to somewhere around $28,000. So after 9 years, Priya has about $28,000 invested and a car that's never more than 3 years old. Derek has a paid-off 9-year-old car worth about $8,000, a monthly cost of $280, and zero investments. On pure net worth, Priya is ahead. But look at what happens next. Priya's lease payment never stops. She is on lease number 4 and counting, indefinitely. Derek's payment already stopped 4 years ago, and from here on, his only cost is upkeep on a car that's already his. This is the twist that makes cars different from houses. A home usually appreciates, so the buyer wins eventually story from the housing comparison holds up over a long enough timeline. A car never appreciates. Every dollar of equity Derek built came purely from paying down debt against an asset that was simultaneously shrinking in value. Buying a car isn't really an investment in any sense. It's a way of eventually eliminating a monthly payment, nothing more. The real financial case for buying isn't wealth building, it's cost avoidance. And it only pays off once the loan is gone and you keep driving the thing well past that point. There's also a discipline problem. Just like with renting versus investing, Priya's advantage only exists because she genuinely puts that monthly difference into an index fund instead of a nicer apartment or a very tempting vacation. Buying and financing, on the other hand, forces the saving. Derek didn't choose to pay down $25,600 of debt each month out of sheer willpower. The loan required it. But buying has its own weaknesses. The first is timing. If Derek had wanted to sell or trade in the car after year 1, he likely would have owed more than it was worth. Being upside down on a car loan is common in the early years and can turn a trade-in into a bill instead of a credit. Buying only pays off if you keep the car long enough to actually pay it off, and then some. The second is exposure to a single depreciating asset with a single point of failure. If Derek's car is totaled in an accident, his insurance payout is based on the car's current market value, not what he still owes. And if those numbers don't match, he can end up owing money on a car he no longer has. Priya carries the same accident risk, but her lease typically includes gap coverage automatically, so a total loss usually just means walking into a dealership and signing for a new lease. The third is flexibility. If Priya decides she wants a smaller car, an electric one, or simply gets bored, she waits for her lease to end and switches. Derek either keeps his car, sells it privately, or trades it in, each of which takes time, negotiation, and usually leaves some money on the table. And finally, mileage matters enormously for leasing in a way it simply doesn't for buying. Priya's lease caps her at 12,000 miles a year. Going over triggers a per-mile penalty, often 15 to 25 cents a mile. For someone with a long commute or who road trips constantly, those overage charges can erase the entire monthly savings and then some. Derek can drive his paid-off car 30,000 miles a year, and the only thing that changes is how soon he needs new tires. So which is actually better, buying or leasing? As always, it depends. Buying tends to win if you plan to keep the car for a long time, ideally well past the loan term, since that's when the payment disappears and the real savings begin. It also wins if you drive a lot of miles, since ownership has no mileage penalty. The useful rule of thumb is your expected cost per mile. Divide your total costs over the years you'll own the car by the miles you'll actually drive. The longer you keep a paid-off car, the lower that number falls. Leasing tends to win if you value driving a newer, safer, better-equipped car every few years if your annual mileage is modest. And if, just like with renting a home, you actually invest what you're saving instead of letting your budget quietly expand to fill the gap. And it doesn't have to be permanent. Someone can lease through their early career for flexibility and lower payments, then switch to buying once their driving habits and income stabilize. Derek traded flexibility and a chunk of early equity for an eventual payment-free car. Priya traded ownership for lower fixed costs, less maintenance hassle, and a growing pile of investments, with the trade-off that the payments, unlike Derek's, never actually end. The real questions are the same shape as they were for housing. How long will you actually keep the car? Because selling or trading in early can wipe out a buyer's advantage fast. And if you lease, will you genuinely invest what you save? Or will that gap just become a nicer trim package next time around? So no, leasing isn't automatically wasting money, and buying isn't automatically the smart choice either. Leasing pays for depreciation and a finance charge. Buying pays for depreciation, a finance charge, and eventually nothing at all. But only if you stick around long enough to get there. Derek needed years of ownership after the loan ended for buying to actually pay off. Priya needed the discipline to keep investing every lease cycle for renting the car to actually pay off. 9 years later, the difference between them wasn't really about who bought and who leased. It came down to what they each did with the gap. Subscribe to the Opportunity Cost for more videos breaking down the logic behind the financial decisions we make every day. And let me know in the comments, are you buying, leasing, or just driving the same car until it physically refuses to start? Respect. See you in the next one.